Thank you for listening to our podcast, Talking Out Cloud, the podcast where we share IT cloud insights and discuss highlights. I'm your host, Danny, and today we'll talk about MVP stuff. What does it mean to be an MVP? Kubernetes, is this the one-stop shop for developers? And Kubernetes and Ops, what does it mean to modernize standards for managing infrastructure? In a summary, we will touch upon the following topics. So, what does it mean to be an MVP? Challenges and technical complexities when working with Kubernetes, IAC, managed solutions for Kubernetes, and many topics more. If you would like to understand where to get the engineers with the right skills that manage infrastructure, then keep listening. Please let me introduce my guests for today, Wesley Haakman and Richard Hooper, both principal cloud architects at Intercept. In their daily business, they're responsible for designing, implementing, and overseeing cloud computing strategies and supporting customers. Please welcome both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
A pleasure.
Yeah.
So let's go right directly in the conversation. So what is an MVP?
It's us.
Yes.
It's an award.
Yep.
It's not a work thingy. It's not a career thing. It's you contribute things to the community. So you mentor people. You share content. You write blog posts, videos. I mean, we do a podcast as well. Mm-hmm. And then you share that with the world, Microsoft related. And then if you are lucky, then you get awarded the Microsoft MVP award. And you have to prove yourself every single year.
Yeah.
And you've been one for how long?
6 years now. We got the renewal period actually coming up in March. So then we have to wait like until June or July. I think it's July, yeah. And to find out if we've actually been renewed or not. So it's quite a stressful time in between March and July to find out if we actually do get renewed. But it's
you're nervous for this kind of renewal?
Yes and no. I would miss some of the benefits, but if it doesn't happen, I can always apply again as long as I keep doing what I'm doing with the community stuff. Then, if I'm doing enough, it's all good.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's you do what you do, and you do it because you like doing it. Mm-hmm. If it's forced, like you're doing it because you want to be an MVP, then it's going to be a challenging couple of years because then it feels very forced to do blog posts and to create videos. And I mean, you have to like doing it.
Yeah. And obviously you're talking about technology. So and just for the listeners, MVP stands for Most Valuable Professional. Mm-hmm. So what kind of technologies do you most of the time post about or build a community around?
So you're also awarded in a category, right? So you can be awarded in Microsoft Azure, and you have a subcategory, and ours is Kubernetes and open source.
Correct.
So that's what we do. We post about Kubernetes, open source, some AI, some security stuff. But you also have business apps, MVPs, and I think there's an Excel Access.
Bond, right? It's cool. Some old technologies, and there's still MVPs out there, which is crazy. You think they'd all get brought into like the M365 category, but nope. They still got that Excel.
Yeah, but I mean, being an Excel MVP, that's cool, isn't it?
It is quite cool. But they also have those Excel championships where you actually go and compete at how good you are at Excel, which is really cool. You can like watch them on YouTube. It's crazy what they can do with Excel.
Nice.
Yeah.
So and then you have a big network of MVPs throughout the world, and then once a year you have the MVP Summit in Seattle or in Redmond at the Microsoft headquarters, and then they share their plans, and you get to talk to the product teams. And what we see the last couple of years, pretty much last year, you have more engagement at other events as well. So we went to Microsoft Ignite in Chicago, and we had quite some meetings for MVPs planned by Microsoft. That's pretty cool. So you do get the new technology, or you get to understand the new technology before it's released to the public. Yeah. Obviously, you can't share it because NDA, and you don't want to breach that. But
At Ignite, I even managed to get a one-on-one meeting with the chief product officer for Microsoft Azure, which was really cool, all because I'm an MVP. So we sort of had a chat with him about what's coming up, what focuses he should do for the MVP community. And so like, even though we're MVPs, we help other MVPs and try and grow the program still, which is nice.
Great. So how many MVPs are there?
There's over 3,000 MVPs in the world. Our category, Kubernetes and open source, there's not that many. I think there's more in Europe than there is in the whole of the United States.
Right.
So I think the US have like 6 or so, because I just got another person nominated and he got accepted. I think Europe's about 32, something like that, which is quite a big number for that area. But when you go and look at the M365 categories, there's hundreds. Yeah. So it's a small number in the whole scheme of things. Yeah.
Sweet. So how do you become an MVP?
You do community stuff. And community stuff, I mean, it's everyone gets it their own way as long as you contribute. I did a lot of blog posts, and then I started to do a lot of public speaking. But then, to be fair, the public speaking became easier once you become an MVP, because you get your sessions get accepted more often because they know you're experienced and bigger events. So for me, it was blog posts, and these days a lot of videos. But you did blog posts as well, right?
Yeah, so I started blogging back in 2016, just because I needed somewhere to store all of my notes, and because I'm getting older and I couldn't remember everything I fixed, so I started blogging to put them in there like a wiki. And then I started falling in love with the writing, the technical writing, so I just continued doing that. And then the Azure exams changed from normal AZ, or no, not even AZ back then, 7535s and stuff like that, to the AZ role-based exams. And there's no study guides, so I created all these massive study guides, had millions of views on them. And then I got noticed at Microsoft and other MVPs, and then I went to an event called, Cloud Camp in Dublin, and I got invited to a podcast recording with what's their name, Paul, someone. Anyway, this podcast recording, and then all these other MVPs were there, and they started nominating me to become an MVP.
Oh, cool.
They were shocked that I wasn't an MVP, so they got their laptop booted up and nominated me. I filled in a massive form with all my contributions that I'd done, and figured out that I didn't actually put enough details in the form, so I had a chat with the local MVP representative in the UK, and we went through what I did, and she goes, "Yeah, you should be an MVP." So just it's all about that community, that reach, and it's a long process, but it's worth it in the end.
And you have to be nominated, right? That's
Yes.
important. Another MVP has to nominate you,
or a Microsoft employee,
or a Microsoft employee.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And what's then the most ideal channel to communicate with your community? Is it like specific websites, or is you mentioned blog posts? So do you own or host your own website?
Yeah, we both have our own blog, and then I think videos. We see a lot of what we do is every week we do a show called Cloud Native Weekly, and we stream that to YouTube, LinkedIn, and X, and we see that on the show itself we get more and more viewers, like live, and then afterwards as well. But I think that's the biggest channel.
Yeah, and Blue Sky in the cloud native world is taking off as well. So Blue Sky is created by the people who created X or Twitter, and it's like a social network. And a lot of the cloud native people have moved from X over there, so we're seeing a lot more traction there as well. But you can't live stream there yet, so fingers crossed it comes soon, and then we'll be there as well.
Sweet, sounds promising.
Yeah.
So why Kubernetes?
Why Kubernetes?
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
For me, it sort of happened naturally. I've got a sysadmin background, so I started off with help desk doing computer support, moved up to servers, became a sysadmin. And back in them days, because I'm old, it was physical machines, and then we started to virtualize those machines into VMs. And Kubernetes is just like the next step. You've got your VMs, and now you've got your containers. And it's just like doing the virtualization, it's just the next step. It's the same steps we used to do back in the Hyper-V VMware days. We're now just doing it in the Kubernetes world with just different names for the same kind of technology. So it's just, for me, a natural fit. And it's just so much fun because it's ever changing. And being an MVP and someone who always likes to learn, this open source world is constantly, you have to learn every day, otherwise you become obsolete. So that's another good thing about it. Yeah,
it's the operating system of the clouds.
Yes.
Everything runs on Kubernetes. No, I think for me it's the scalability. That's why I got into it. Pretty much because it's an answer to a lot of questions. We had virtual machines, we had app services, and then for me, I mean, the way Kubernetes started and was marketed was the Kubernetes is everything for the developer. I mean, you mentioned the one-stop shop. That's what it was marketed for developers. But like Richard said, you've got sysadmin background, me too, IT ops. we used to manage VMware stuff and virtual machines, and so we would patch an operating system because every other Tuesday or once a month we had Patch Tuesday from Microsoft.
Yes.
So we ran all the patches, and then containerization became a thing, and developers were like, oh, I've got all the flexibility because with an app service, for example, you have a sandbox, right? You can write code and you push to the app service, but if the app service does not have the feature, tough luck, you don't have the feature, think of something else. Then with containers, we it's operating system virtualization, right? So we package the operating system, and then the developer can do all the stuff that they used to do on the VM, but now in a container. But then we ops people, we didn't really follow along, and then we saw developers going that way, and we were still doing Patch Tuesdays and all that stuff. And then the problem was that a developer was never trained to manage an operating system.
Or networking.
And then they had hundreds of containers, and then you need an orchestrator. Kubernetes is one of those. Still insanely complex back in the day, but that's what they started doing. So that's why they hosted their containers, and then we were not using Kubernetes, and but we did see it was an answer. So for me, getting into Kubernetes was because I saw that developers do not have the ops skill to manage Kubernetes. I didn't have the skill to manage Kubernetes, but I have the ops background, so I'm getting into that.
It's just so easy as well, having the ops background, because it's just infrastructure. It's just a Hyper-V virtualization platform, basically, but it's called Kubernetes. It's an orchestrator, which is like VMware. Your container images are like your zip deploy files for your IIS websites. It's just exactly the same kind of steps we used to do. So it just sort of falls quite easily for the IT ops people, I think.
Would you say it's easy to learn Kubernetes for someone with an ops background and troubleshooting, like 10 years ago, and picking up the phone, hey, this is the help desk, how can I help you? Like that kind of troubleshooting, would it be easier for those people to learn Kubernetes, or for someone who just finished school, got into Azure?
So I would actually say, someone who has that experience, looking at log files on your virtual machine and that kind of stuff, the help desk people who's done the virtualization stuff, people like us, it's a lot easier for us than it is for new people, because new people aren't learning about DNS, basic networking stuff. They're learning about the cloud, the SaaS, and they're forgetting all of the basic stuff that you need to understand to be able to use Kubernetes well.
Because it's still a computer, right?
Yeah.
Still memory, CPU, disk, networking.
Networking always seems to be the hardest one people forget about.
I think in the future, right now we see that, right? I think we had a discussion internally yesterday where someone said, I could get a job. Back in the day, I was asked, do you want to learn how to program for AS400, right? The old mainframe stuff.
Yeah.
If you can do that now, you're making good money, like very good money, because nobody else can do it. Networking is kind of going the same way. It's like the trade that's slowly dying because nobody's learning about it anymore. And it always comes down to a couple of people to fix it. Maybe networking will be like the golden skill to have in the future.
I could see that, yeah.
Cool. So many of the conversations nowadays we have is about AI. So how is AI integrating in AKS or Kubernetes?
It runs on Kubernetes.
The whole of OpenAI literally runs on Azure Kubernetes services. So yeah, without Kubernetes, we're not going to have the AI infrastructure we have now, or the speed of the evolution of AI, I think, without Kubernetes.
Interesting.
How many nodes? OpenAI 7,000 it was, or
Something
more
like that. Yeah, it's probably more now. I think that's an old blog post.
And I think if you look at AI, so we have Azure OpenAI servers, and we have other services where you run the large language models or agents these days, right?
Yep.
Whenever this is launched, but last week it became public preview, AI agents on Azure. So these are SaaS services, so you pay per use and you pay for every prompt that you do. So you get tokens and you pay for the tokens, and then someone puts something in Dutch and it needs to be translated to English, and you have twice the tokens. It's very expensive. At scale, it's expensive. Yeah. So what you will see in the future, and you already see that happening in a smaller scale, is software companies going, all right, I want to do AI agents, I'm going to use them, but I don't want to pay for all the tokens, and I don't need the expenses. I need a small model for my specific case. Maybe you need 10 different models, 10 different agents, and you can host them on Kubernetes, because then we can host them on a VM skill set, and then we don't have to pay for tokens because it's our own infrastructure, and we can get reservations on the skill sets, so we can make it even cheaper. And that's when it becomes interesting at scale. But the only way to do that, to orchestrate that, is on Kubernetes, because if not, you would have to do it manually, and well, that's a problem.
Yeah, and with this as well, you can actually scale down to 0. So when you get like a TCP connection or a request to that pod through, say, a service bus or something, then it will spin that pod up. So you actually can reduce your infrastructure costs so much thanks to Kubernetes.
Interesting. So you mentioned some of the benefits. So what else does Kubernetes bring, which we haven't touched upon?
Scalability. I think more the flexibility. It's when I said it earlier, you never have to say no. There's we can talk about CNCF a little bit. There's a very big landscape, open source landscape, where all the things that run on Kubernetes. I mean, in April we're going to KubeCon.
Yep.
That's a big event, Kubernetes event or open source event.
Yes, the biggest open source event in the world. They're looking maybe 15,000 plus people. They haven't given any official figures yet, but they reckon it's going to be the biggest one yet, which is going to be awesome.
And that's all the stuff that runs on Kubernetes, around Kubernetes, touches Kubernetes. All those programs and projects are there. And we're talking hundreds of projects. And I think for the benefit for us is that customer comes up with a question, hey, can we do that? And we never have to say no. It's our Swiss Army knife. We look at the CNCF projects, what works, let's try that. And this was a challenge with open source back in the day, and don't want to offend anyone, but a lot of open source was some kid in his mom's basement writing code, and it wasn't enterprise ready, but you could use it.
But I've got an open source project as well, so I'm exactly like
just
that.
Not in your mom's basement.
No, not in the basement.
No. Right now, if you look at CNCF, you have a list of all the projects that have been donated to CNCF, and they can have different stages from sandbox to graduated. But you can also see how they're backed by which company. So you can see Red Hat sponsoring a project or Microsoft sponsoring a project. Microsoft even contributing open source projects.
Quite a lot now recently as well. Yeah.
But then you can see, all right, this is open source, but it's being maintained actively. We can use it for customers.
Yeah.
And that extensibility, for me, that's the biggest benefit. And then Kubernetes itself, like vanilla Kubernetes on machines, is insanely complex. But then we've got AKS, and I think that's what makes it powerful, the extensibility of AKS. Yeah,
and I'd also say the way the open source world now works together more. So we got this new project called CRO, CRO, and it's with Google, Amazon, and Microsoft all working together to bring this new technology. Cool. Whereas back in the day, they would never work together. They would be full-on competition. And now this open source Kubernetes world is bringing everyone together, and that's cool because we're getting some amazing products out of it. All these really, really smart people are just creating some awesome stuff.
Cool. You get any particular use cases that you're proud of, which you recently worked on?
Plenty. I like every Kubernetes project, really. I like it when we get to. So you have Azure Kubernetes Service, right, which is managed Kubernetes, but then it's managed control plane.
It's more managed control plane.
The complexity of Kubernetes is managed away by Microsoft, so you can just deploy it and you don't have to bother with certificates and then what Microsoft did is they built a lot of integrations with Azure itself. So the use case I'm most proud of is where everything happens on Azure Kubernetes Service, and it just then taps into Azure Key Vault or storage or and then when the customer no longer has to think about how am I going to deploy it, they can just focus on writing code. So we can even do GitOps and pipelines and make sure they push your code, build it, we make sure it runs. Those are what I'm most proud of. That goes more into the platform engineering side of things.
Yeah. Nice. I guess for me, some of the projects I've worked on recently where we've migrated customers from say AWS over to Azure and managed to improve their service just by migrating it and building the sort of infrastructure around it to make sure it can scale infinitely, nearly infinitely because of capacity and stuff like that and costs. But in an ideal world, it can and reduce the actual startup time of their application and stuff like that. So that's some good things. And then also building sort of systems around Kubernetes. So like Kubernetes is the new backbone. Back in the enterprise world, I would say Azure, not even Azure, Active Directory was the backbone of your enterprise. And now Kubernetes is the backbone of the enterprise. And I think that's quite cool.
Interesting. So that really shifts.
Yeah.
And it's also why we embrace it a lot. It's the interaction with Microsoft and the product teams and the way they listen. Good example, I did a podcast recording last Monday, and I talked about image integrity, where you can sign images and then check if it's signed by you before you deploy it. So it's like a security step. And 2 years ago, when you wanted to do that, you had to go through 5 different posts from different companies and products to bring everything together and click and type for about 2 days to get it working, and then hopefully it works.
Yeah.
And then you give that feedback to the product team, like, look, this is what we're doing. Security-wise, supply chain security is important. This is what we want to do. And then a year after, they're like, hey, we got something. And now I just click a button instead of going through 5. And they built that they listen so carefully, and they build it quickly. And that's what makes it work, because if you work with a lot of customers and you come across different use cases, you're like, hey, this is a problem, we need to fix this, they will do that.
Yeah, that was at KubeCon Paris, I think.
It was
had that conversation.
In the pre-day.
Yeah, which was cool.
It wasn't even a year, it was like 8 months later they built it.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah,
and then they're taking it even further now with Copacetic, which is a CNCF product they built. They've now put it into that Azure Container Registry, so it can automatically patch your images as well. For if they sense a security vulnerability, they'll just update it for you automatically, and then tag it with like updated or secured or something. And it's really cool that they're doing all of this to make our lives easier and all the developers' lives easier.
So what you're saying is they listened to the community, made it standardized, and then everybody can use it as an open source.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
So did you provide any of your projects into the CNCF project list?
No, you should do yours.
I have contributed to quite a few CNCF projects, mostly with the documentation side, because I'm not a developer, and that's something I can work on. So I've done it for like Kida, K8 GPT, and a few others. But I have been working on my own open source project called KubeTidy and KubeSnapIt. KubeTidy cleans up your kube context file because that can get messy if you're consultants like us working with lots and lots of different clusters. Massive file gets really messy, so this cleans it up. It's all written in PowerShell as well, because sysadmins, we love PowerShell. There's not many PowerShell tools out there, and KubeSnapIt will basically sort of snapshot your whole AKS cluster or certain parts of it and create the YAML files, even your Helm chart files, so you can restore it back to your dev cluster, or you can make a change in production. If it goes wrong, you can revert back quite easily if you're not using like the correct methods like GitOps or something like that. It's it's a good little tool. So maybe one day I should donate it to the CNCF. It could be quite fun.
I mean, you got quite the downloads, right?
Yeah, KubeTidy has had over 3,000 downloads now, I think, so it's getting there.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, got a new logo coming out soon as well.
Oh, the one I saw the preview of.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just waiting for the brand pack to be created. Yeah.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it.
We're always busy building stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's like, even though we're just focusing technology, we start going down this marketing route or social media route or brand guys. Yeah. So even though it is this CNCF, you get to touch so many different parts of it and learn new skills all the time, which is something cool as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about ops. So there was a steep learning curve for embracing modern standards for managing infrastructures, such as infrastructure as code.
Yeah. So the challenge is that infrastructure as code in general. I mean, we've got ARM templates and Bicep, and we're all getting used to it.
Fun times.
I started with ARM templates.
Same.
I mean, Bicep came out, and I still stuck to my ARM templates because I understood them.
I embraced Biceps so quickly.
It's better.
It's so much better.
It's also fun how that originated. Little side story. We were in Orlando, was it?
Yeah,
it was in Orlando. Microsoft Ignite, couple of years, pre-COVID,
2019.
2019, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Microsoft said, all right, we got a bunch of people here. We got ARM templates. Nobody can read them. And they're really complex. They're good, but they're really complex. Here's 3 examples on paper. Which one do you prefer? And that became Bicep.
Yep.
Like a couple of years later, that was good.
That was cool.
But that was infrastructure as code. So the reason why we do infrastructure as code and not clicking is being able to scale and standardize stuff. So the problem with clicking, we did it back in the day. I have a computer, I have an operating system, I'm going to install an application, and then I install it, and then I need to install another computer with another application, same application. If I do that 100 times, is it going to be the same every single time? Or is there even weeks in between, different operating system versions, different patch versions, different naming convention because I forgot something. Yeah. I mean, and it's a lot. It's repetitive, right? It's a lot of work. Yeah. So with infrastructure as code, we have one standard. You deploy it once, or you deploy it 100 times. Every single time it's the same. That's difficult for people to learn if you've always been clicking, because when you click, you get direct feedback. You click and you see what happens. Mm-hmm. If you write code and you deploy it, you're going to deploy infrastructure, 10 different parts. You have to wait for everything to be done, and then it doesn't work. Where's the error? But if you get it right, it's extremely scalable, right?
It's beautiful when it's right, especially first time, which doesn't happen often at all. But saying with the portal as well, the portal feeds you where to click and what options you have, whereas infrastructure as code, it's just like, here's an API spec, you can go and pick whatever you want. Whereas with the portal, it's like saying, oh, you want security? Click this button here, and this will give you the security. Whereas, Bicep, you have to go, right, I need to find this line, and then I need to enable this bit, or maybe I need to enable that bit to get it working. And that's part of the learning curve, understanding the actual products in Azure or in any of your cloud, and what options can work well with the other bits and pieces. So, if you know the products well inside out, like I do with AKS, I can write you a whole AKS infrastructure as code within like 10 minutes using the AVM-based modules, so the Azure Verified modules. If you wanted me to do you, I don't know, like a Redis cache or even Databricks, that's going to probably be weeks because I don't know those products very well. But
but then you get the feedback if you do it through the portal, right? Mm-hmm. And then the problem, that's the learning curve, the steep learning curve. When you do Kubernetes, there is no pointing and clicking. There is YAML. Mm-hmm. And YAML is nobody's friend, but then we all need to use it as a language.
Is it 2 spaces, 4 spaces,
tabs? Is it a tab? don't do tabs or indentations. It's but then you have to do infrastructure code. And as ops people, we would never write code. Well, we do scripts for automation, but never write infrastructure as code.
Sometimes we'd have an MST file for your MSI.
Yeah, but it was like a config file, right?
Yeah, basically.
But then developers, they did understand because they write code. So the thing is, things are modular. When we write as IT ops back in the day, everything we would do is imperative. So we would write a script and it would go from top to bottom. We would just do next step, next step, next step. If you write a template, like Richard just explained with the verified modules, you have different modules that depend on each other, that leverage each other. And for a developer, that was way easier to understand how that works in the beginning than for ops people. But then the problem with Kubernetes is, so the developer, I got this, I understand it, I know YAML, I'll do it. But then the developer does not know about DNS and memory and CPU and networking and all that stuff.
Private DNS. Linking it to the right VNets.
And that's what we saw with customers in the beginning. Developers started using Kubernetes. The ops team just started doing something else. They didn't even know they were using Kubernetes. And then they call like, hey, we want to go to production. We're doing Kubernetes, but we just learned we cannot develop our way out of this. We need ops experience. But then it's hard to find because then you need the ops people with the infrastructure as code experience and the troubleshooting background. And it's not like searching for a unicorn, but there are not many people that have that.
No.
Which is not like a disqualification for all the new people, but back to what you said, with school, you don't learn about that anymore.
Nope.
Nobody who just left school and learned about cloud build a computer back in the day.
Yeah. I remember building computers back when there was no internet and you had dip switches on your graphics cards and stuff to try and figure out the amount of times I blew up pieces of components because I had it wrong. It's just unreal. Luckily, I got them really cheap and all free from like some places I shouldn't probably mention on there. But yeah, it was good. Like this is back in the days of Windows 3.1 and stuff like that. So I'm showing my age now. But yeah, nowadays with the internet, with everything could be easier, but people don't want to learn it, and they really need to learn those basics. Break some things because that's the best way to learn is breaking things.
And when you find the people, they are very expensive. And that's another challenge for a lot of companies, like where we work. We're a managed service provider. And when we're insanely good in Azure, and that's what we're known for, like for the expertise. So people will come to us for, I want to do more Azure, I want to get better at Azure, and Intercept is the place to learn that. Then the problem is when we look at our hiring, you can find the Azure people, they want to come to us, but and then we pay them X amount of salary, right? Now with Azure Kubernetes, we look for Kubernetes experts, but those experts could also work on AWS or on a Google Cloud, and or even vanilla Kubernetes, or even Azure Local with Kubernetes these days, because that's very cool. The thing is, we're no longer just competing in the hiring with other managed service providers focusing on Azure. We're competing for people with Red Hat, with those kind of, with ASML, with Intel, big companies that have a little different budget, maybe a bit more, maybe bigger budget.
Bigger.
So they will literally buy the people off the market for a lot of money, and they get to work on a big project, and that's all cool. But it makes it harder for companies like us that have a different business approach to things to get the people. So it's very difficult to get those people.
I would say it also makes it harder for all these software companies who are working with Kubernetes and want to work with it. So that's why they find partners like us, because we're like a CNCF Silver partner now as well, which is good. So, we're soon, hopefully, Kubernetes certified support partner as well with the CNCF. I think that's it's KCSP or something. So, we're the people to go to, but we struggle, they're going to struggle. So that's why we've sort of been working on some internal projects to actually give customers a fully managed Kubernetes offering, so they don't even need to worry about any part of Kubernetes. They can just, like Wesley said, give the code, here's a container image, everything else works for them. They don't need to worry about updates, scaling, the resilience. Is all taken care of them, because we find it's so hard to find these people. Let's make it easier for our customers or potential customers.
Yeah. So what about the community? Can you look for a resource in the community, or do you feel like there's the same struggles or challenges?
So what I do, well, everyone has the same problem. If you look at any, I wouldn't say, other companies like us, they have the same issue, the same challenge. What is good about a community is whether you're working at a different company or if you have a problem with Kubernetes and open source, they will jump on a call and help you, and they don't care that you're a competitor, or that happens all the time. We have people who worked with us before, they now work somewhere else, somewhere on the other side of the world, and we still jump on calls like, hey, so the cool thing about the community is that everything is helping each other, but we're all struggling with the same problem. And that's like big companies buying away talent. It is what it is. You do see people coming back from that as well, because instead of doing one single project, what we do is we get to work with many different customers, and then we try to standardize our AKS deployment, but every application is different. So there's a different challenge in every project. I'm working on one big project for the next 2-3 years that,
it's a bit boring.
For me, it would be boring. Doing the same project for 3 months is already a problem for me. But you see them coming back into the market, but then you have the next challenge. They got paid so much, they have to take a step back. And I think that market still needs to mature a little bit. But with the ever increasing popularity of Kubernetes, I think this is still going to be ongoing for a couple of years before it levels out.
Especially with the AI boom, pushing the need for more people who can manage Kubernetes as well.
And then you get to talk about things like FinOps on Kubernetes, right? Because if you're going to run AI workloads on Kubernetes, you don't want to have all the expensive NVIDIA GPU stuff. That's you can. You can.
It'd be nice for CSPs and
but then you go back to the traditional computing again. I did a session at an event a couple of months ago, and it was about using GPUs, like the NVIDIA stuff on Kubernetes, and then doing the time slicing. And
that was a good session.
So you get a GPU and you slice it apart into smaller GPUs, and so you can be more efficient. That's also what needs to happen. It needs to be taught more. So customers do not have the fear of it's going to be insanely expensive. But then you see Kubernetes being the answer again, because normally if you have a virtual machine, you have an AI workload, you get one GPU, one virtual machine, and the app uses the whole GPU, whereas it might just need 1/8 or 2/8 of that whole GPU. But you can't do that. You use everything. And then with Kubernetes, you just slice it apart, like we did with virtualization back in the day. So then Kubernetes being the answer again in a FinOps way.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and then you did a book writing a couple of years ago.
Yeah. It's still relevant.
Yeah.
And can we expect another one? A next chapter?
That's a good question. If the publisher wants us to write another one, we can. But I do keep toying with the idea of writing a book called like the AKS book. So like doing it as a community thing, like Wesley, me, old colleague called Carl, just working together to write this book. But it'll be like a living book because it changes so often. But yeah, it's just trying to figure out the time, the plan and stuff, because writing a book's not easy. It's fun.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, yeah.
Because your first one was, I guess, about the fundamentals.
It was about containers on Azure, like all the
Azure Containers Explained.
Yeah,
something like that.
It was Azure Containers Explained. Yeah.
And it basically it was like a story from your startup. You want to start in containers. These are your options. You could go function apps. You could go app service. You could go Azure Container Apps. But in the end, you'll probably end up on Kubernetes because you're starting to grow and you're using more containers and you need that orchestration, that scalability. And basically you always end up on AKS.
Yeah.
I think we could self-publish the other book.
We should be able to. Just need to find some time.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. I mean, it's not a work problem because then we do our work, but then in the evening we're also still texting like, hey, I've got this, have you read that, and then
it's like we don't shut down.
Yeah, and then at some point you're on the couch with your wife next to you, and she's like, "Well, that's a bit of an unhealthy relationship." But it's okay.
Who are you chatting to?
Who are you talking to? It's Richard. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just Wesley.
But it's and then we talk about text. But then we could find some time and write it. But it's the other book took about a year, little under a year.
Yeah.
But it's also the publisher was great, but it's also the chasing of the publisher.
Yeah.
It's like you're missing the deadline by a day. Hey, where's the chapter?
Yeah.
And you get that because you got technical reviewers and stuff, right?
Yeah, and the editor was really helpful as well. Like, Wesley is not English native, but his English has improved so much just by writing the book. And she was correcting me more than him in the end, because I'm dyslexic and that. So it was a fun experience for us both, I think.
We could do one in Dutch.
Nice.
No. You could do one in Dutch. I wouldn't be able to. But yeah. And then we got the LinkedIn Learning course that I'm doing as well for AKS.
Yeah.
So I'm just in the process of redoing that now.
Ah, sweet.
So that should hopefully come out sometime this year, maybe June-ish, maybe early, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's just to help the ops people learn how to, what are your options in AKS and what you should be doing in AKS. So yeah.
Ah, cool. Yeah. All right. That sounds really promising. So we conclude this kind of the podcast. Then I hear you say it's about scalability. It's the cloud platform we can actually use and will be the most probably standard for the future. I hear you say look into KubeCon. We can maybe expect a Dutch book from the both of you. And then you will release your LinkedIn courses. Yep. So sounds like a promising year for the both of you as well, discussions we had.
Yeah.
So I'd like to thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Of course, a pleasure.
It's been awesome.
For our listeners, thank you, of course, for listening to the podcast. For the next and the upcoming episodes, we will have some more customers joining us here in the studio. So please check out the socials, and we will post some more about what you can expect here as well. Richard, Wesley, the other way around.
Yeah.
Richard, Wesley, thank you so much.